From the nation's capital, welcome to Your Source TV, your resource to be empowered and to look beyond. I'm Tamara Stuchlak, your host, and in this segment we explore the intersection of science, humanism, and spirituality. With us today are two extraordinary experts in the field. We're so pleased to have Dr. Alex Bennet and Dr. David Bennet. So Alex has a PhD in human and organizational systems. Alex, you are the former Chief Information Officer for the U.S. Department of Navy, and that was the Deputy Chief Information Officer, and a Chief Knowledge Officer. You are an internationally recognized expert, and both Dr. Bennet have been honored by Vice President Gore with the National Performance Hammer Award, and both are co-founders of Mountain Quest Institute. Dr. David Bennet is a nuclear physicist with the U.S. Navy. He has a PhD in neuroscience and adult learning. David is the former CEO of a company specializing in engineering management, information technology, and organizational development. So what do you share, what is your passion for sharing this perspective with organizations, and you do it with groups and individuals? What is most interesting to you to share and to be of service? Alex, in your work. David, start.
Oh, okay. I think the thing that is most fascinating is the new concepts of knowledge and what it means versus information, and the power of understanding those and actually using them in your learning process. Now, we can't go into it here very much because it takes too much time, and we're halfway through with our third book on that subject. But knowledge itself is the capacity to take effective action. So we tie knowledge to action, which we did for the Navy and most of the military. And therefore you can measure it, you can see it, you can understand it. Now, how do you create it? How do you learn it? How do you apply it? So it gets right into how do people understand their jobs and their goals and their objectives, and then be able to actually implement them. Organizations, one of the biggest problems, of course, is that organizations don't listen to each other because the culture is not supportive of collaboration, which gets us into our first book all about collaboration, working together to create synergy from the knowledge that two people have with one goal, one objective, one problem.
This knowledge, this connecting of the capacity to take effective action, the mind-brain is always anticipating the future. Each and every one of us, every decision we make, every action we take is an anticipation of an outcome, okay? It may or may not be right, but because there's such complexity, and the complexity is increasing, we call it KUKA, increasing change, uncertainty, complexity, and the anxiety that results from the change, uncertainty, and complexity, which
KUKA,
all of us has.
It's kooky.
It's kooky.
But it's real, but it's real.
It's real, and whether you think of it as happening in an organization or happening in your individual life. And today, this year, 2010, 2011, and now this year as we move into 2012, you see even more of it. It's just almost exponentially increasing. And frankly, it's difficult to live in this environment, and you cannot live in this environment the way you did in the past. And so a lot of what we talk about when we talk about knowledge is at the very core of what it is to be human and what it is to exist, and how do you take effective action in this new environment.
So we've had change management around for 5, 7, some 10 years. So what's different? What aha have you come to that you share?
Okay, let me address that. One of the most important things that we discovered, I would say about 5 years ago, and it's simple, and that is you can't teach anybody anything, whether they're a child or an adult, but you can create an environment which is conducive to learning, and then you can help them learn. Now, translate that over to change. You can't order anybody to change and expect it to happen, because if they don't want to, if they can't, if et cetera, they can get around it, whether you like it or not, in an organization.
Oh, absolutely.
So you must create an environment in which they understand why the change is necessary, how the change should occur, et cetera, and then help them with the organization.
So change comes from within. We know that. And perhaps we didn't recognize that a while back when we were more in a bureaucratic mode. But I think most people understand that today, that it has to come from within. So the question really becomes, how can you create an environment in which they want to change? We begin with awareness. In order to change, we have to have awareness of what it is that we want to change. But that's not enough. We need to understand it. We really need to understand what's going to happen after it, because we always are anticipating the future, as we talked about. And we need to get a deep understanding of what it is that we're to do to change, okay? But that's still not enough, because we have to believe it's true. If we don't believe it's true, we really will not act on it. But that's still not enough. We also have to
feel good about it. Because if the internal part of you feels bad, you will not do it. It just doesn't make sense to you.
How about competing change? Because that's always there, competing change. So, you know, there can be groups of people that have different ideas about what the awareness is and what the feel-good is.
And that's where the explanation, the understanding, the feeling needs to cover both groups. And that takes time and energy and effort. And it doesn't always work.
But it's still not enough, because now you have to have ownership of it. I mean, no one is going to act unless they have ownership of it. It's something I need to do. And that's still not enough, because we come back to that word that's been around for a couple of generations, empowerment. Because you have to be both externally empowered and internally empowered. I need to know what to do. I need to have the skill sets to act. So it sounds kind of hard, doesn't it? All of that has to be in place. Or if you're trying to change something in a change effort, you need to ensure that all those things are emerging in each and every individual.
So change only comes when we have dream teams and pockets of change, or your experience?
But it doesn't have to. That depends upon the management, the leadership, and the culture.
Yes.
And all three of those must be dealt with carefully during a change process. Now, the thing that's still left here is the individual must have the knowledge to know what to do. Do things that make the change, if you will.
Brings it back to our focus on knowledge. But we can give you an example where all of this happens in just one split second.
And that example is you're leaving a friend's house at night, and you're walking to their backyard to your house on the other side, and there's a swimming pool between the two houses, and it's getting a little dark, and as you walk by, you see an 18-month-old baby fall in the water. How long will it take you to jump in that swimming pool and save that baby? About 3 seconds. During that time, if it goes to your mind, every one of those things that we talked about has happened.
Wow.
You're aware of it, you understand it, you believe it, you feel you must do it, you have the responsibility, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not a matter of time so much, although frequently it is. It's a matter of how you get people to want to change themselves because they feel it is important for them and the organization. And that's the challenge.
We know that all knowledge is situation dependent and context sensitive. We're aware of that, okay? So knowledge that is good in one place may not be knowledge in the other place. It may only be information, okay? Which are any kind of organized patterns. So we understand that about knowledge. But think of today's environment, the environment we're in today, that we call Kuga, okay? All of this stuff is happening around us. And so there's all of these reasons for us to look and try to do something different, which means that we become more open to looking around, to trying to build our awareness, to try to build our understanding. And we want to believe. We want to find something that we can believe in. So people today are actually searching for that thing, those things. And we believe that what they're searching for is at the nexus of science, humanism, and spirituality.
They just are not aware of that.
You define spirituality in your work in this context as?
Oh, great question. Spirituality is of pertaining to the soul. So you have to ask, how do we define soul? And that has that has to go to the next question, right? So how do we define soul? David?
Well, I've never found a satisfactory definition in any book yet, and I'm still searching. But I believe that the one I prefer the most is the fact that it relates to what is the purpose of life, why are we here, and what kind of morality we as human beings.
Really, the broadest.
Yeah, and what kind of morality are we responsible for because we are here? Now, those are a little loosey-goosey themselves, but I have not seen a precise definition that covered it. It may exist somewhere, I don't know.
We write a lot about spirituality, and usually when we go to our writing, we talk more about it being that enlivening principle of the human.
Doesn't have a really good word.
The human life.
No,
with a specific focus, though, in 3 areas, and that is on morality and the emotions, the nature of emotions. And then the 3rd area would definitely have to do with the intellect, because all of those combine together. So that's how we consider the concept of soul. It includes both thought and action.
Now, as a scientist, I frequently run into the point that all scientists don't believe in any spirituality. Now, obviously, that's false, and I know it's false. Many do believe in the physical world, and that's all they've lived in. Many are much broader to look at that. But I think it's important to recognize one key thing, and that is, I do not believe there's any such thing as absolute knowledge. And in my talks and when I present or facilitate, I always start there and say, who believes that there's absolute knowledge?
Isn't that a basis for learning, though? To keep that door open.
Of course. Keep that door open. And often we know that, but we forget it. And therefore, you know, I believe this and that's right, and therefore I'm not going to listen to anything else. As long as you have an open mind, and that's hard for all of us, it's not trivial at all, then you're in a position to say, well, perhaps I should think about it. Perhaps I should ask questions about it. I should try it to see if it makes sense. And if you can do that, then you start having some level of understanding, comprehension, reflection on it, and even some level of ownership. And that's a key right there. If you develop some ownership of something, then you have a much stronger feeling and interpretation of it and be able to use it much better than if it's somebody else's idea that you don't think is right.
So how do you bring the full human into this experience? I mean, we've talked a little bit about that we believe in this, but how do you really bring the full human into this sort of an event? Well, there's a lot of ways to do that. First of all, the people who usually come together in some kind of a workshop or some kind of a meeting where they have some change to go about and focus on, usually have issues that they bring in with them. But each and every one of them is there because they have certain expertise. They have certain experience that is key or core to coming up with some sort of an answer for the organization.
Everyone's a piece in the puzzle.
That's right.
Yes.
So what we need to do is really tap in to what that is. Now, often they may be aware of it, but they have even more that they're not aware of. So one of the things that we use is called hemispheric synchronization. And in the evening, David usually starts with we do a wonderful evening meal with fine china dining, get everyone interacting.
These are at your workshops that you facilitate.
That's right, the workshops we facilitate. But then we actually offer this opportunity to do a visualization using sound and the binaural beat, a combination of that. And you go back and you do it in your own room. We do a prep session, trying to get everybody to relax, and if they have any fear, working through that. Generally, these people don't have fear. They're pretty confident with who they are, and you know, this is just something new. So, okay, I'm going to try it. So the first night, 1 or 2 or 3 decide to try it. And they have amazing experiences, absolutely amazing experiences. They start tapping into their own unconscious. Well, with hemispheric synchronization, you literally are able to quiet the mind. If you choose, it's not done to you. It's done with you. It's a tool. It's like training wheels. But you're able to quiet the mind, and if you choose, go from your conscious viewpoint into your unconscious. Well, what happens with these experts is they start getting ideas emerging. All sorts of things, and they are surprised with themselves. Somehow those disagreements and all the battling that's been going on seems to become much, much less important. So now these 2 or 3 share with the rest of the group what's happened, and now everybody wants to try it. And so all of a sudden we have a shift in focus, and we have this marvelous learning experience, much more open, but also intrigued with who they are, intrigued with these ideas that are emerging from them, intrigued with all of this internal landscape that they perhaps have never accessed, at least consciously, before.
So in a work environment or a relationship, how would you suggest people switch to that focus? You know, what turns on that focus? I know you facilitate events, but as we're sharing this with others and they're listening, and you've provided all of these amazing perspectives, what are some practical experiences that you've seen where people just switch in their work environment?
I don't think it will happen unless the individual starts thinking about it and becomes aware of its existence, first of all, because most people are not even aware of the way they think and the fact that this is the world as I see it, it's always helped me and so forth.
So if the team leader doesn't bring it to them, how does it bubble up? Tough question.
Casual conversations, casual conversations. Now, facilitation, if you're facilitating a group, then there are some things you can do under those conditions. You can get people to solve problems which cover more than just the physical world, sort of the spiritual and the humanistic world, and let them talk among themselves. Because in talking among themselves, they can be open and free and so forth. In speaking to a group, or even talking to themselves, they're not free. They're based on only what they know. And once they get to know each other and move around and so forth, then they can develop ideas and listen to others and have some ownership. And once they start having ownership, then they start thinking about it, and well, that sounds pretty good, let me get more. And then you've got a situation in which they can learn.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you being here.